Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello everybody, my name is Debbie from NDIS Property Australia and you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast, a show that explains, guides, highlights and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. Today we have a return guest speaker. It is Jeremy Thornton from Insurance ADVISERNET. Hi Jeremy.
G'day Debbie, thanks for welcoming me back. I must have done it right the first time.
You did very well the first time, but we often see each other at conferences around the country to do with SDA. Yeah, it's very familiar.
Yeah.
To be back conversing with you again on a conversation about insurance.
Yeah.
SDA. And I think it was about a couple of years ago we had our previous episode recorded with you.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, we first really started promoting what we're doing in the SDA space about 2 years ago. So that was the very formation of it. And as the insurance wheel turns extremely slowly, it's kind of evolved over the last 6 or 7 months. So it's probably timely that we catch up and actually let people know. We've been doing some things at the NDI-SDA conferences over the past 6 months and letting people know and blowing their minds on what could go wrong and what the changes are. So to be able to do it with you today and get it to a wider audience, magic.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, the last conference we went to was in Sydney a few weeks ago now.
Yeah, in May, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it surprised me. I wasn't aware that things had changed so much. So it was like, oh, we've got to record another episode to update everybody on what's happening in the insurance world for SDA insurance coverage.
Yeah, there were a few jaws on the floor at that conference, to be honest. I might have even been a little bit vocal about it all. And I don't know. I get that way sometimes. I get a little passionate.
Yeah, well, tell us what has brought about the changes.
Yeah, so as much as the world of the NDIS and SDA is continually evolving to try and, provide better outcomes for the participants and the community at large, the same happened in the insurance industry. So the insurance industry is part of the wider financial services sector, and we went through a Royal Commission a couple of years ago. So the fallout from that didn't impact general insurance too much, but there were some new guidelines or recommendations that were made for insurers to actually have to clearly define what a product is. So we now live in a world where we've got things like DDOs and TMDs. So to the average, to the average consumer who is supposed, this is to protect, they wouldn't know what they mean, all right? So a DDO is a design and distribution obligation, all right? Now everyone knows that, and you'll forget it. And a TMD is a target market determination. So that basically means that what a TMD is, it defines the class of customers an insurance cover has been designed for and includes what customers are eligible for it. So that's a whole lot of Royal Commission-based mumbo jumbo that has been designed to make the world better for the consumers. Right. So what that did is, while we were placing cover on a commercial property owner policy for a couple of years, just before Christmas 2023, just when we're all relaxing and getting into Christmas parties and preparing the stretchy pants for Christmas pudding and everything, our insurer says, sorry, from 31st of December, we're no longer going to offer cover on SDA. So that was a mic drop moment, which with 2 weeks to go till Christmas, well, what do we do? What do we do here? And the reasons being is, their reasons being, is that under a commercial property owner's policy or commercial BizPack, the DDOs and the TMDs didn't match what the product was designed for in their eyes. So they sent it to their legal and compliance people and said, this doesn't meet it. So as much as I've been banging on for the past 2 years about the fact that this is this is a disability care facility in houses clothing. That's what an SDA is. So you've got to treat it as a commercial entity for what goes on in there. The reality is, from an insurance point of view, they flipped it and said, no. It's a house. and houses are designed to be lived in. So if a house is designed to be lived in, under the world of TMDs and DDOs and A, B, C, D, E, F, Gs, we can't place that on commercial anymore. We must do that on residential. So when it went to a residential basis, then the residential part of this insurance company said, yeah, but we don't want to underwrite them. Oh, joy, what a Merry Christmas we're having. So the good news is one of the key insurer we've been using actually turned around and over the January and early February phase, actually did some work with the compliance and legal teams and the underwriting sides and made them realise that there's no reason why they shouldn't underwrite this product. There's no actual overtly higher risk involved in this, and we should be placing them. So they came to an agreement and we could now place them on a residential landlord policy as long as there is no more than 4 overnight occupants. And that's the kicker there, is under the TMDs, if it's a residential house and there's 4 unrelated maximum living in it, it's deemed to be okay under a residential landlord policy.
Right. So that still doesn't cover all SDAs.
Correct. Yeah. So the beauty is that the majority of that and the interest on SDA property insurance over the last 6 months in particular has been staggering. In fact, last month alone, I just finished May, we had our biggest month that we've had on record. I think we were doing nearly 5 a day at one stage. And we're only a few days into June and we've already been doing 5 a day. So it shows that from when we started on this 2 years ago, there was a bit of a time lag. So we were getting people who are starting the builds. They're going through the licensing and ticking all those boxes, which are pretty tricky and have to be done. And now with the catch up of builders and materials coming in and everything being signed off, I think we're seeing that builds are being completed and people are moving into houses. So it's been quite busy. So 95% of those have been under 4 occupants, which has been great. If there's more than that, we still have a solution. We can still place them on a commercial property owner policy, but it's with a different insurer. All right. So
it goes back to commercial again.
Correct. Yeah, correct. So anything 5 or more within is still deemed to be commercial and we can still place that. So it's actually turned out to be a pretty good result at the end of the day because it means on the smaller dwellings, you're actually getting much more tailored products. So the product for a house automatically includes things like theft cover, automatically includes glass cover, which we had to build in before. Things like that are automatically included. And the pricing for that product is at a much more sweet spot for a house because some of the pricing on SDAs by late last year was getting horrendous. It really was getting high. And we're seeing a lot of them have even 60% less than what they were last year. Yeah, quite decent. Yeah. But obviously, again, if there are bigger ones and they do have, 5 or more, and that can happen if we've got an OOA, for example.
That's what I was just going to ask you. How is an OOA considered as an overnight resident? Because basically they're not sleeping. The OOAs are working. That's a shift. It's an overnight shift and they shouldn't be sleeping on the job.
Yeah, well, yeah, you'd hope not, wouldn't you? Yeah, so basically it comes, and one of the questions we ask is how many bedrooms and how many is the house designed for? And I can tell you quite honestly, the majority have been 2 to 3 participants with an OOA. So we haven't seen any issues. I think in the past, well, it was February we started doing this. So in the past 4 months, I think I've had two out of the many that haven't fitted that bill. So that's what we're seeing is a lot of the smaller dwellings are coming online. We've even had a couple of places where there's been like a block of units. There was one where there was 5 units under a single roof line. And within that were actually 8 people. But it was deemed acceptable because there's separation, unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, unit 4. So the insurer actually accepted that as well. So it's capturing the majority of the SDAs. The bigger ones, yeah, we've just got to still underwrite on that commercial basis.
And look, yeah, as you said, there's not going to be a lot of the bigger ones. Seeing a lot less group homes, which is 4 or 5 residents plus carer. Seeing far more of those come to the market, go in the pipeline, the recommendations, both the pricing, SDA price review and the NDIS review that happened last year were to phase out group homes. So I guess this insurance product actually kind of to match.
Yeah, it does. And that's exactly right. And I think in an ideal world, this is the setup we would have had in the first place. It's just that it took some time for them to really get their head around what SDA was. And then when they went to the legal people who are always a barrel of laughs, and we love them, don't get me wrong, but they do look at things very black and white. That's when they went, oh, we really shouldn't be doing this because it doesn't match our requirements under the Insurance Contracts Act, which is the defining act that insurance works under. So if they're in breach of that, they can't do it. And I totally respect and understand that. But to now be moving to a structure where the majority of them are done under a house policy, even though, yep, I've been banging on about it not being used for that, they've accepted it. They've agreed that the terms and conditions are not going to prejudice a consumer. So an SDA investor, an owner, he's not going to have any issues with definitions of what an insured is, any exclusions on use for a business. He's not going to have that scenario, as long as there's 4 or less in that property. So good news in that regard.
Very, very good news. Can you give us more? I mean, you mentioned that the price reduction for the insurance policies can be quite significant. Are you able to give us a bit of an indication of what an average actual policy would be now?
Yeah, it's tricky because, I mean, every state and territory has different risks. So it's still rated on risk. For example, if we've got a risk in Far North Queensland for and I did one just last week, there was a property up around the Townsville suburbs, and that was around 650,000 rebuild, brand new. And I think the premium there was just on $3,000. However, the same house in central Melbourne, or the western suburbs of Melbourne, was about 2,100. So
that is significantly less than what we have been quoting insurance in the past.
Correct, exactly.
Anywhere from 4, 5, 6,000 a year.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and we've had some that are going through the renewal phase at the moment. And last year they paid $5,500, and this year I think one of the girls from my office did one, and it came out at $2,400. So it's a significant difference.
Right. More than half.
Yeah, more than half. And the reason is because the product, from an insurance perspective, is designed for a dwelling. So they're pricing it accordingly. And to not bore people with, in the background of insurance is a volume game. It's a numbers game. So the more houses they have, if they've got 100 houses, they're collecting a premium on 100 houses, hoping to God that they only have 2 or 3 make claims during the year, then they make money. So that's how the insurance generally works in that regard. So there is significant savings in that regard. We haven't seen anyone come out with a fairly negative result. I'm trying to think if there was one. I don't think there has been so far. Touch wood, it continues that way. But yeah, sorry, Deb, just finish that on pricing. Yeah, it is really based on where you are as well. So, but again, the Far North Queensland is probably the highest risk on we actually come across, which now we can underwrite. So when we spoke 2 years ago, we couldn't do Far North Queensland, Far Northern.
It was just going to bring that in because they weren't doing that at all.
Correct. Yeah. So we've had a couple in Darwin come through. Northern Western Australia, not yet, but Far North Queensland is now not a problem at all. But when we could do it, we did one last year through the other insurer we use, and it was like $8,000 for a dwelling. And that one is now just under 3,000. Sorry. So yeah, big difference.
This is fantastic news for investors.
Absolutely, it is. But I got to let people know that the underlying principles of what I've been saying about SDA, it hasn't changed one bit. So if you still go online and search for an insurer through the direct market, or you ring 13 whatever, all those insurers you see doing those wonderful commercials on TV that make you think fluffy things and that insurance is all wonderful and beautiful and ladies wearing red and all that kind of stuff, that's just nice, clever marketing. The reality is they still don't want to write these, all right? So they don't want to do it because they don't understand the risk yet. Same as I've only got one insurer who really understand the risk on small dwellings. If I go to my other insurers I can use on residential landlords, they still don't want it. They don't understand it. They deem it community housing, which they see as a high risk. And to a point it is, but they haven't quite understood how to properly underwrite that. Hence, they're not doing it. So we always still say that, look, please talk to an insurance advisor. I'm actually pretty open in that regard. I don't care if you don't use me. I want the whole insurance broking market to know how to do these so they can better help the community. Because the more that do it, the better the outcomes for the SDA investors, which then flows down to the participants who are getting the help they need.
Well, I mean, short and sweet, you kind of really covered everything that's changed. And is there anything else that an investor really needs to understand about insurance of their SDA property?
Absolutely. So the underlying fact that I've been talking about for a while now, and I keep ramming this, is the contracts you have. So the agreements you have with the SDA provider, and then further down, having some knowledge of what the property is being used for, who is responsible for everyday wear and tear and maintenance. It's a key part of insurance. So insurance policies aren't actually maintenance programs. There's plenty of people that think, well, I've got insurance, I've got a little nick in the wall, I'll just get them to pay for that. If you did that for every single little bit of wear and tear or nicks and knocks to the wall, you wouldn't have an insurance policy left. So you need to use it wisely. If you've got a participant in there and they've been moving a wheelchair around, there's scuff marks everywhere, or you get the odd robust participant and you might get an elbow through the wall, you get one little hole, you really want to push that risk onto either the SDA provider or the SIL, depending on who is responsible for that. Clearly know, kind of like any residential lease agreement really, if I'm in a residential lease scenario sitting here in my office and I decide to basically just out of spite trash the place, well, that's my fault, all right? Now, so the participant has a certain level where they don't quite understand what they're doing. We totally respect and understand that. But the SIL or the SDA provider does have a responsibility to maintain that property in a good working condition. They can't then vacate it, for example, which happened to us once, got vacated and the SDA provider contacted our client, the owner, and said, hey, you need to clean up all this damage. Well, it doesn't work that way. That's a maintenance scenario. Maintenance and wear and tear needs to be covered by others. So please, SDA investors, make sure that you're getting your lease agreements, your SDA provider agreements set properly, and check that they're going to be responsible for wear and tear and the maintenance. There are also funds available through the NDIS chain there. That's a subsection where you can upkeep that property. Because if you claim for every small thing, we're not going to have an insurance product at all. We're lucky to have this insurer do it, but if we abuse it, we're going to end up in a pretty poor position again.
Thank you for clarifying that, Jeremy. We have a lot of questions from investors over, the insurance, the maintenance, what's it going to cost them every year for all the damage that's going to occur?
Yeah.
And that is exactly what we tell them. The majority of the maintenance from the wear and tear is going to be handled by the SDA provider and the SIL provider who are operating and working in them.
Correct. And I think there's still a bit of an unknown about that. They just presume it goes to insurance. And it was great at the last conference in Manly, Sydney. I think it was Charles Northcott who actually got up and spoke. I could have bowed down in front of him and said, thank you, because he's in the side which is involved with that and he understands it. I was so happy to hear someone say that in front of a group of peers. Because, you need to use your insurance policy wisely. Use it for the main scenarios. If I look at the claims we've had over the first couple of years, they've been minimal. I think we've had only 2 malicious damage claims. And just to give you a quick rundown on that, that was a scenario where a robust participant did have a psychotic moment. And the SIL, we're over in WA, but the SIL did a fantastic job. They reported it properly. They managed the situation properly. They had to get the police involved because there was a fear of injury to themselves. So the police put a report in, and the report from the SIL clearly said, that there was malicious intent to damage the property. And the claim was up around the $80,000 to $100,000 because it was a single event and this person just lost their senses and decided to destroy everything. So we had boarded up windows, we had fence panels missing, we had holes in walls, and it was all from one event. And that was fine. That's what it's there for. But that's really the only major claim we've had, touch wood. A couple of smaller ones in regards. We had someone had their hot water system stolen. It just had been completed. They got the occupancy certificate, and a week later, as the tenants are moving in, where's the hot water system? So that's covered now. That's not a problem at all. And the loss of rent from that. So that larger one I was just telling you about, the malicious damage, that place couldn't be lived in for about 6 or 7 months. So the income that the property owner would have made in that time was covered by the insurance policy. So loss of rent's included there as well. So, you've got to be able to use it wisely. We also say if you want to save some money, look at higher excesses. If you're only going to use it for those bigger events, I think the excess is $600 most times. Go 1,000, go 2,000, find a limit that you're happy to work with to bring the budget down. But so far, as I said, touch wood, the claims have been pretty good.
Good to know. Obviously, 2 years ago, you were just starting this. You probably hadn't had no experience of claims at that point.
No, there was none, and there was a lot of fingers crossed and clenching of teeth, going, oh dear, because if we get a couple of bad ones early, well, then we might have lost the insurer. So we've got a partnership going where they're backing us because we're giving them quality clients. With the way we vet our clients has really improved a lot over the last 12 months. We do a lot of that through our web page. We have a checklist they complete, so we're vetting the information and also making sure they're aware of what their rights and responsibilities are and what they need to shift down the line to the provider and the silk. So they've got comfort in that. The loss ratio, which is everything insurers look at, which is how many claims they're getting compared to how much premium in, that's really low. If we can keep that going, my hair might grow back. I'll be really happy if that happens.
That'll be great. I just want to go back to, you mentioned Far North Queensland as an area that in the past we couldn't even get insurance, but now you can, and it's a little bit more than other areas. And you mentioned you've also done some now in Darwin. I'm not sure if that comes at a bit more of a premium.
Pretty much very similar, actually. Darwin's, I've only been 2, I think, in Darwin so far. But FNQ, there's been a real uptick. The issue with the timing of FNQ was terrible because they were all coming on board a year and a half ago and we couldn't do it. So there's a little bit less now. But yeah, pricing-wise, they're still very similar because up in the northern parts of Australia, I don't know if everyone knows this,
Cyclone risk.
That's right. The major risk is cyclone. And, while insurers are in the business of risk, they want risks that are unforeseen. Cyclones in Far North Queensland aren't unforeseen. They're going to happen every year. It's like Tornado Alley in America. It's going to happen every year. So insurers have to keep trying to price, knowing that each year I'm going to pay more out in claims than I'm making in premium. And like any household budget, if you're paying out more than what you're getting in, you're going to end up bankrupt. So the Australian government thankfully stepped in with a reinsurance pool for cyclone losses. And that has meant that the insurers get reinsured, getting technical again, by the Australian government. So they can set their pricing at a more lenient mark because they're now getting backed by the government if a major cyclone comes through. To me, it's still not 100% right. There's some teething issues. And there was a cyclone earlier this year where there was flooding for a week after that. It took 5 days to come up. And part of that wasn't covered by the cyclone reinsurance pool. So there's a few things there that need to be tweaked. But it's the reason the pricing is higher because the risk of something going wrong is a hell of a lot higher up there than where I'm sitting in a beautiful little office in the mid-north coast of New South Wales.
And there are no other areas really that have concerns like that? So obviously the northern part of Australia, it's just all a bit more.
Yeah, so the northern part of Australia is, if you put a big blanket over it, that's a major risk. The whole lot is in that regard. But the population, we're great at building populations in areas where things go wrong. So that's what's happened there. The growth of the population on the far north coast is huge. So that's what's happened. Other areas, there are pockets, like where I am, for example, from 2019 to 2022, my area, got smashed by 6 natural disasters. And we're still actually recovering from it. So I'm in an area which I guess you could say was from the Tweed coast, the border of New South Wales, Queensland, down to Newcastle. That area just got destroyed, and we've had a lot of flood problems in this area. So the insurer, if it is deemed to be in a flood zone, they're going to price it accordingly, but they're isolated. So the mapping that insurers use is really quite precise nowadays. So they can look at my house and go, oh, that's up X degrees compared to the house next door. So the house next door is a higher flood risk, for example. So it's really quite good mapping nowadays. And you may see an odd one where there is a higher fire or flood exposure risk rating. Apart from that, it's all pretty good.
Great to hear. Fantastic. Any last words you'd like to leave us with, Jeremy?
Oh, you're giving me a chance to talk more. That's dangerous.
Love to hear you talk.
No, look, my big thing is, look, please just get advice. And from talking to some of the people, I was in Adelaide earlier in the year and then Sydney only a couple of weeks ago. I think we're coming to Brisbane soon, huh? Woo-hoo, beauty. So the thing is, if you've got an insurance broker now, please use them. But I'm happy to give them advice as well. I don't, I'm not in this game to actually, make millions of dollars out of it. I just want to make sure the community gets the right advice. If you want to use our services, great, please do.
Contact details.
I'll give you those. SDAinsurance.com.au, all right? SDAinsurance.com.au. That gets you to our landing page. From there, you can click a Contact Us button, and there's a checklist there where you can fill in to actually get a quote done. So we can handle that for you. But I've recently been advising other insurance advisors on where to place it, all right? So I'm happy to guide that, and you can still use your local advisor who's got your other businesses and other properties and keep things all nice and tidy. So Yeah, please just get advice. Don't rely on the direct market insurers. They're good at what they do, but they don't understand this. They just don't get it. So please get advice. And if we can help you out, sdainsurance.com.au.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure to have you back to update us in the world of insurance for SDA.
Oh, terrific. No, it's great. Always great. And we really thank yourself, Debbie and Min, for the support. It's great to be involved with you guys.
Okay, then. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.